Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome back to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Jim Higdon, co-founder and CCO of Cornbread Hemp, book author, and former journalist. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. All right, before we get started, if you could please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. It would really help us out a lot. If you could also leave us a positive review, we'd really appreciate that as well. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can contact me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. All right, I'd like to get started by just talking about how you got into the industry. You know, as a book author, a former journalist, what brought you to the cannabis space or the hemp space?
So I grew up in a town called Lebanon, Kentucky, central Kentucky, and my town was notorious as I was growing up as the headquarters of the largest domestic marijuana syndicate busted in American history, a group that the federal government referred to as the Cornbread Mafia. It was this between 1985 and 1989, 70 guys from my town arrested on 30 farms in 10 states with what the police said was 200 tons of marijuana. And that's a story that really stuck with me, really kind of traumatized my community with how the federal government came down on these families. And it stuck with me. So I went off to college to become a writer and wanted to tell a story about where I was from. And this was the story that I wanted to tell. I went to Brown's writing program. I went to the Columbia Journalism School and learned the skills necessary to come back and report a big nonfiction book about what happened in my town, how it happened, why it was that the largest marijuana syndicate in America happened in rural Kentucky and not California or New York or Texas or Florida or anywhere else, and why all of them were Catholic. All but a few of them. And that comes back to the connections of these families to prohibition, to alcohol prohibition several generations before. And I was able to report that story out and make a good book out of it. And then the success of writing the Cornbread Mafia book led me into a journalism career. And so I was propelled into a journalism career where I was covering breaking news in Kentucky for the Washington Post and cannabis politics and policy for outlets like Politico. And in the course of covering cannabis news for Politico, especially in 2018 with the passage of the Farm Bill that was going to legalize hemp outright, realized there was an opportunity to get out of the bleacher seats and into the game.
Is the short answer to what happened to your community the connection to prohibition?
Yes.
And did the community ever recover?
Very good question. The community has not quite recovered from the first prohibition. Mm-hmm. So before 1919, there were 9 active distilleries in my small county in Kentucky. Again, all run and worked on by rural Catholic men who all literally had a dozen children each. And when that was made illegal, those men were forced to a decision. Do they let their kids go hungry, or do they do the one thing they know how to do and break the law to do it in order to support their families? So there was created in that context an understanding in the community that one could break man's law without violating God's law, that one could still be a productive member of their community while operating outside the law. And that cultural outlawism was really handed down generation to generation, where my community had an interesting relationship with the law, and it was something that could be broken if no one got hurt. And so when the grandchildren of Prohibition went off to war in Vietnam and realized the value of cannabis in other parts of America, and it was growing wild behind their grandparents' barn anyway because of the Hemp for Victory effort that was going on during World War II from 1942 to 1946, that hemp, after the Hemp for Victory movement ended, didn't go away. It just grew wild in the fence rows, literal ditchweed. Mm-hmm. And these guys realized that ditchweed had value if grown and cultivated the right way to the right marketplace. And all they had to do was grow it and not get caught. And not getting caught was kind of what they were good at. So it was just, I describe it in the book as a science fair volcano of sorts. Like you get these couple of different elements together, and it really kind of popped.
I apologize for not being familiar with the book, but are the community members still incarcerated?
All of the members are out of incarceration, although a number of them did significant time, up to 30 years, maybe 30 years plus, for in one case, 20 years or more, and at least a handful of others. Some of these guys did a lot of time for cannabis crimes.
After they got out, did they get into did they come back into the cannabis market?
There are a number of them working in the hemp space now. In 2018, when the Farm Bill was about to pass, a provision was slid into a draft of the Farm Bill that said that drug crime felons would have a lifetime ban to not be allowed into the hemp business. My reporting for Politico on that topic perhaps contributed to a rollback of that provision, and the drug crime felon ban was moved to 10 years with a grandfather clause that allowed anyone who was already in to remain in the programs. So there are a number of Kentucky guys with drug felonies on their records from cultivation, OG cornbread guys who are now cultivating in the hemp business.
What was the Hemp for Victory program?
The Hemp for Victory program was instituted in 1941. The 42 is the first growing season. So when the U.S. government, in its infinite wisdom, outlawed cannabis and hemp in 1937 in order to prosecute marginalized communities, the U.S. government, the U.S. Navy, was still a primary consumer of hemp product, hemp fiber for rope for the Navy. But at the time, it was fine to outlaw it in America because the U.S. Navy was getting primarily its hemp supply from jute from the Philippines, where America had a significant presence. But directly after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese took the Philippines. And so America, when it was forced into World War II, was also forced into finding a new source for hemp because it had lost the Philippines to the Japanese. So the Hemp for Victory effort was a way for the federal government to jumpstart the hemp economy in America to supply the federal government with hemp fiber for the U.S. Navy.
Were any of your direct relatives or distant relatives involved with the Cornbread Mafia?
Not directly. My outlaw side, I'm a quarter Willet on my father's mother's side, and the Willets had a little bit to do with Prohibition. Maybe doing some bootlegging and that sort of thing, but not on the cultivation side when it came to the outlaw cannabis industry in the 70s and 80s.
So as an author and then a journalist, I mean, you made real change happen in your community and the nation. Why did you want to jump into a business owner or founder?
Because as a journalist, I was in the bleachers. I was watching these things happen and reporting on them and writing the story about this is what is going on. But the ability to affect change as a journalist, like you said, is there. It's possible. And I feel like to the degree that I could, I have affected change in my past career as a journalist and a book author. But there's no substitute for the real thing. And being in the business of the space and offering products directly to consumers, this is where the magic is.
So talking about the products for the consumers, why did you want to expose the shady practices that companies use in CBD products?
Well, this is what we discovered was our opportunity when I was a journalist. 2018, we're talking about. So at this point, a long time ago. It doesn't feel that long ago. The hemp industry was and still is primarily based on a whole plant formulation. They take the whole plant, they cut it off at the root, they grind it up in essentially a wood chipper, pelletize it, and then extract hemp extract from these pellets. That's a combination of hemp flower, but also lots of fiber and cellulosic material from the stalks and chlorophyll from the leaves and things that aren't necessarily beneficial from the point of view of the hemp flower. It's kind of low quality, but consumers didn't know any better. and we wanted to make a flower only product. We make a flower only product, and now we're involved in a real messaging campaign to talk to consumers about, if you're interested in CBD and you're committed to spending your hard-earned money on CBD products that aren't cheap, there's no point in buying whole plant when you can buy flower only. And so we're engaged in an educational campaign to help people understand that flower only is the way to go.
So part of that educational campaign is the video that I saw, the promotional video, and we'll post it below this interview. But let me just start by saying it was not only informative, but damn hilarious. So well done.
Thank you.
And to that point, when you're discussing whole plants, can you talk me through the analogy with the orange juice?
Sure. So we were racking our brains trying to figure out how to communicate to consumers the distinction between whole plant and flower only without bogging ourselves down in internal jargon. Mm-hmm. And it was we constantly ended up shortchanging ourselves by getting really into the business of the business and talking about cannabis and talking about the process at a very minute level. It's better for this way, it's better for that way. But we had to step back and say, what do people understand? How can we explain this to people in a way that's simple without getting too bogged down in the details? And it came to us that when you drink orange juice, it's very clear that you're not drinking something made from the whole tree. You're drinking something from the fruit. And that's the metaphor that we've leaned into with this video to talk to folks about. This is how you make an ideal product. You're using the best part of the plant and not everything else. You're not using the whole tree to make orange juice. You're just using the fruit.
I hear in the CBD industry a lot about how different people have different responses to different products. And there are a lot of problems with dosing and making sure that, and there are problems with labeling. Are a lot of these problems because of the whole plant strategy, and you're not really knowing what's going to wind up in each dose in terms of concentration, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the dosing is really variable across the board. Part of this is the whole plant. Another part is that a lot of products are still CBD isolate based or broad spectrum THC free. And what seems to be the case is from anecdotal reports from customers that high level milligrams from isolate and broad spectrum are not as effective as a lower dose of a full spectrum product. Because it has THC, and the THC helps the CBD do its thing, according to some preliminary research. A 2015 study out of Israel, a really good example of that research. So we have customers who've come to us from other brands and tell us that a lower dosage of our product is more effective than a higher dosage of another product. And part of that is the flower only, part of that is the full spectrum.
Are you in a good spot right now because there's so much, not misinformation, but there's still so many unknowns in the CBD industry that if you really educate people about your product and what you're offering, you stand to gain a lot of headway against your competitors?
I think that's right. Because there's no FDA regulations and no clear definition of the terms that are being thrown around in the space, a lot of brands are taking advantage of that gray area to say things that just aren't true. And there's no one out there to police them. Lots of brands saying they're organic when they're not organic, but unless they go into the world of the organic program, there's no enforcement mechanism to make them stop saying that unless they apply for or try to get the USDA organic seal like we have on most all our products. They can say organically grown or organic this and that, but unless it's certified organic, it's not organic.
Mm-hmm. What are some of these other shady practices that you're hoping to expose?
Well, the whole plant formulation is not so much shady. It's just basic. It's just a low standard that the industry is stuck with. It's how they make the product. The real shady business comes from farmers getting stuck, farmers getting not paid for hemp that ends up in CBD bottles. And not to get too deep into this, but there are brands that are marketing products containing hemp grown in Kentucky, where those Kentucky farmers were never paid for it. And that's really infuriating when we're working in the business trying to keep farmers together. Lots of farmers have lost their shirts in this industry, and our relationship to our farmers is the most important relationship that we have as a company. And to see farmers get stuck and to end up with a bad taste in their mouth of the whole CBD hemp industry as a result is really frustrating to us.
How are farmers getting kind of stuck with or not getting paid?
Well, a big company will contract with a farmer for, let's say, 100 acres, and then harvest that acreage and not yet pay the farmer. One of these big companies has since gone bankrupt, forced into bankruptcy because of a mountain of unpaid debt. And among the unpaid debts of this company that went bankrupt is a bunch of farmers.
Okay. And is that sort of first and foremost for you guys, is doing right by your farmers?
I mean, it's vital. It's like, the supply chain starts with the farmers, and Kentucky farmers have had a tough time and getting them in hemp being offered to them as a substitute for the tobacco economy that has completely collapsed since government support has gone away, really led a bunch of hungry, desperate farmers into thinking that hemp was going to save the day. But because the FDA is slow to enact regulations, there's been an artificial cap in the marketplace. Major retailers, major pharmacies, major groceries have not yet brought on ingestible CBD products into their offering because of this delay in the FDA. And that delay in the FDA has stunted the supply chain, stunted the market. And the people who got hurt, people who continue to get hurt by that delay are the farmers, the people who risk the crop. Like, you got to plan a year ahead. You don't know what's going to happen at the end of the year when you plant a crop. And so, a lot of these farmers just got stuck, and it's really frustrating and, makes us really want to increase our market share so that we can increase our buy to our farming partners, because we want Kentucky farming product in the marketplace. And this is how we do it.
What can farmers do to protect themselves?
Well, I mean, beyond advocating to their elected officials to pressure the FDA to issue regulations, the USDA has begun the crop insurance program for hemp. And that's a good thing. There's a double-edged sword that goes along with the farm insurance, or access to farm insurance for hemp. It could have also been partly to blame for the glut of the hemp crop in 2019, which was the first standard year for the USDA to calculate the hemp market for the purposes of creating the insurance program. And so if you didn't grow in 2019, you might not be eligible for that insurance at a later year. So a lot of farmers might have been growing hemp with their eye on recouping it in insurance down the road. So basically it comes back to the FDA, where we were promised a legal industry, and everyone thought when the Farm Bill passed that it was a legal industry, and no one anticipated that the executive branch, in this case the FDA, would drag its feet on regulations and keep this industry on the sidelines where it was legal but not regulated. It crippled a lot of farmers who took a risk in good faith and got stuck.
Do you do any of your own cultivation?
We do not.
Do you have plans to?
We are not the farmers.
Okay.
We let the farmers be the farmers. The farming is the most important part, and this is not what I went to school for. So, we we partner with farmers. We're not trying to cut out the farmers and be the farmers. We're not vertically integrated. We work with farmers. So, having good farming partners is key to our business. And we work with family farmers who run organic farms. They know what they're doing.
What is your current market share, and what is, how do you plan to grow it?
Couldn't tell you, can't tell you, don't know like what percentage of the market cornbread currently occupies. We're growing. We started small in 2019. And we were the first Kentucky company to offer certified organic products by the end of 2019. And we're all geared up for a big campaign to introduce our flower-only certified organic products in 2020. And then, like everyone's plans, they got completely changed by the COVID lockdown. We had to pivot, go all online, stop our retail development, and instead decided to do a crowdfund on WeFunder, raised several $100,000 during the lockdown, and now we're deploying those resources now. We're on track to double our revenue, or better than double our revenue this year over last. Puts us on track to do what we set out to accomplish on a multi-year plan. So we're growing market share every day, and a lot of that's coming from other companies because their customers are understanding that we make a better product. So but I genuinely, not being coy with you, genuinely don't know what our percentage of market share is.
Okay. How did Kentucky become the epicenter of hemp?
Well, I mean, I think partly because of my book.
Yeah.
But my book, the Cornbread Mafia book, reveals that Kentucky is uniquely well suited to be a cannabis production region. The U.S. government knew this during the Hemp for Victory effort. Of the 9 states that cultivated hemp in America during that movement, only Kentucky was requested by the government to supply seeds to be grown in other places with longer growing climates. It has to do partly with the agricultural climate here in Kentucky, which is superior in a number of ways, and also our geo positioning on the 37th parallel. When you draw a line around the globe along the 37th parallel, it crosses the Hindu Kush mountain range in Asia, where all indica strains of cannabis originated. And what that means is the light cycles in Kentucky are uniquely well suited for the cannabis plant, and that combined with the agricultural resources that we have here just makes it a perfect microclimate for growing cannabis.
Thank you for describing what that meant, because when you mentioned it, I'm like, whoa, I have no idea where that one's going.
Well, I mean, it's the 37th parallel combined with the Bluegrass Basin, which is a giant limestone filter that cuts all the iron out of the water. It's why our bourbon is superior whiskey. It's why the thoroughbred racehorses grown in Kentucky are faster than every horse on earth. It's because there's something here that's special.
How did you guys decide to turn to crowdfunding to raise funds?
After determining, because we were kind of late to the game in the grand scheme, starting in 2018, at the end of 2018 and into 2019, hemp companies in Kentucky had been formed since 2014, and the investor class in Kentucky is, existent, but I wouldn't say it's a shallow pool, but it's it's not San Francisco, right? So the investor class generally, members of the investor class who were interested in investing in hemp, by the time we came around looking for investors, had all kind of picked a horse by that point. Had all kind of invested in some other hemp company, or had already lost their shirt in a hemp company because some by then had already kind of gone away. So it was a learning experience for us as we went out to raise funds that, here's a way we can do it. We can do this instead of a Reg D, we'll do as a Reg CF. And then we're not bound by these old outdated rules about not being able to talk to anyone who's not an accredited investor. We can go straight to social media and talk to people like normal people talk to normal people, and raise money with a very, very low minimum investment. Our minimum investment for our crowdfund was $100. Our average investment ended up being just shy of 500 out of 900 investors. And so we raised a good amount of money that way.
How does WeFunder work? Are you beholden to the investors? Is it like Kickstarter where there's, they receive a certain payback as a result of their investment? And how is it different? How is your company going to operate differently than if you had gone with traditional capital investment?
So, very good question. Different from WeFunder, different from Kickstarter in that we're essentially selling equity. We sold equity on a convertible note, which means that we raised money as debt, as a loan, and then that loan converts into equity when the note matures. In this case, in 2 years. So next year, or when we start our next fundraise campaign, which we're also scheduled to probably do next year. That note will convert, and then those investments will turn into equity at that point. So it gives us a chance to increase our valuation. We raised $400K on a $4 million valuation cap. So that'll go to about 10% of the company when it converts. It just has not yet. And all of those, WeFunder has this, I believe, unique ability to roll up all of these investors in the crowdfund, in our case 900, into one line on our capitalization table, which means that when we go into later rounds of investing, when we get VC capital in a Series A at a later date, our cap table isn't messy with a bunch of small investors. All those investors are rolled up into one line. So it makes future rounds of investment easier, even though we've gone a crowdfunding route to start. So it's really the best of both worlds.
What did you use the funds for? Was it manufacturing equipment, facility, other infrastructure?
We've used it for product development. We've used it for payroll and investment in people, and we're using it for marketing expenses.
What are you hoping to accomplish with this next crowdfunding round next year? Same.
Growing market share, hardening our supply chain, and increasing our facilities and increasing our payroll.
Okay. In the information that I was sent before the interview, it said that you are fed up with the continuous lack of oversight in the U.S. concerning CBD products. So, in your opinion, what is the way forward?
Well, eventually the FDA will come in and we'll have some guidance from the adults in the room. Until they do, we're committed to the USDA organic program and working within the USDA organic program. But that's a voluntary high standard. Not every CBD brand is going into the organic program because it's difficult. It's difficult to achieve this high level of of expectations, of standards that the organic program has for people who are certified in that program. So, until there's federal regulations on the FDA side, we're voluntarily going into the USDA organics program because consumers recognize, for instance, here's our whole flower oil. This organic seal is something that every consumer recognizes. It's something that anyone who shops in a grocery store sees in the produce section every time they shop, and it communicates trustworthiness of the product, that it's clean, that every ingredient along the entire supply chain of that ingredient is free from any contamination, that there's no GMO, no irradiation, no use of human sludge to make any of these products, which you wouldn't even think about as a possible contaminant, but the USDA Organics program ensures it. So until there's better regulations at the federal level, the USDA Organic program is really, the highest standard that we can reach in America, and so that's where we are.
So I see the FDA every now and then issue warning letters to companies of CBD product manufacturers. So is the FDA essentially just doing the lowest amount possible, or how would you describe their current role with the industry?
Well, I'm not going to speak ill of the FDA. They have a tough job to do. Full spectrum hemp extract is not something that was ever really in the FDA's purview. And so they have a tough time figuring out how this fits into their existing framework of the legislation that creates their authority. In this case, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. So, it's difficult for them as an institution to get their head around this new type of product, but it makes sense for it to be classified as a dietary supplement and herbal supplement, like many other herbal supplements have been categorized. And I feel like that will happen in time. The problem is now the FDA has bigger fish to fry with vaccine rollout and everything else related to COVID. So it's true that they fire off warning letters to CBD brands on a fairly regular basis, but none quite so bad as they did, I guess, about a year and a half ago now. They sent a salvo of 15 or 20 warning letters to a range of CBD companies kind of all at once for making various medical claims on the websites and social media. Now it's kind of onesies and twosies. I look at FDA warning letters basically every week when they come out. I think most of their focus on FDA warning letters these days is with vaping industries, and most of that is not CBD vaping, but nicotine vaping. Seems to be more of the focus of FDA warning letter enforcement these days than CBD. But it's very difficult as a CBD brand who's trying to communicate with customers about why our products are good and effective when we can't tell them why it's good and effective because we're worried about running afoul of FDA enforcement.
In your opinion, why is your product good and effective?
In my opinion, our products are good and effective because we're making them with flower only instead of whole plant. They're full spectrum instead of THC free, and they're certified organic by the USDA instead of absolutely no regulation at all. So flower only, full spectrum, certified organic. That's the cornbread difference.
Talking about some of the misconceptions behind the whole plant label, is some of the problem that you'll run into between certified organic and that whole plant label is that the whole plant label in general is very misleading in that it kind of reads like similar to an organic label? Like when I hear whole plant, it seems like something that, what's that?
It sounds good.
It does. It sounds good.
Yeah. It sounds good until you understand the nature of the manufacturing process and understand that there's a lot of things in that plant that you don't necessarily want. You don't want the cellulose and the fiber of the stalk in something that you're taking for wellness. That belongs, the cellulose belongs in an ethanol product to power vehicles, and the fiber belongs in blue jeans. Neither of those belong in a wellness product.
How would similar marketing tactics be illegal in other industries in the U.S.?
How would similar marketing practices be illegal in other? I've not encountered an industry quite like the supplement industry in terms of the regulation. Like the First Amendment rights of consumers and brands seem very limited by the legislation and by how FDA goes about enforcing that legislation. I don't know how to make a comparison to another industry, but I do know that as a former journalist, it feels very strange to have to be constantly self-editing and like even editing our own customers' reviews of our products for fear that our customers' reviews will make us run afoul of a perceived violation of a statute. Very frustrating. It doesn't seem to track with the First Amendment as I understand it as a former journalist, but that's where we are.
So as a former journalist, is it difficult to be the most effective chief communications officer or marketer where, a lot of marketing is in selling the products and sort of being a little bit over the top, whereas a journalist, it's like, these are the facts.
As a journalist, I'm a storyteller.
Okay.
Right? Like it's factual in nonfiction, but it's a story. Here's what you need to know. Here's the cause and effect, right? It's factual, but it's cause and effect. And these things cause these other things to happen. And so now that I'm in the marketing business, it's easy for me to apply those skills as a journalist to talking to consumers in a factual basis, in a factual manner. Like, here's why our products are great, but here's this cause and effect. The problem that I bump into again is I want to tell them more and would like to tell them more, but I have to check myself for fear of enforcement.
Okay. You talked about your approach to relationships with farmers. How is Cornbread Hemp going to be different than other CBD product manufacturers in terms of your own employees and staff?
Well, we're working towards a B Corp certification at a later date. We're not quite there yet, but when we get around to getting our ducks in a row with B Corp, becoming certified B Corp requires some real generosity towards staff, and including an employee share pool. So we'll be instituting some of these measures as we grow to make sure that our employees feel as great about Cornbread as we do.
How big is the company right now?
We have 5 full-time employees.
Okay. Where are you based in Kentucky?
We're in Louisville.
Louisville. Okay. I would like to. What is your outlook for the industry in general? Where do you see the industry moving within the next 5 years?
Well, when FDA regs come, the lid that's on the marketplace will be lifted, mm-hmm. and we'll be able to do a lot more now or then than we're able to do now in terms of reaching customers in mainstream groceries and pharmacies and big box retail that we cannot now and won't be able to until that lid is lifted. So we're being the industry is being artificially restrained by lack of regulations. I also anticipate the next farm bill, when it passes in 2013, to open up to liberalize the hemp business, the CBD business to a certain degree, whether that's raising the THC cap from its current 0.3% to something more reasonable like 1%. And possibly in that farm bill, if the FDA has not come in with regulations yet, that farm bill could also compel the FDA to issue those supplement regulations. And when those things happen, then the marketplace becomes a lot bigger. Consumers will become more trusting of full spectrum hemp extract, as a wellness product. And so, but until FDA comes in with regs, we're still going to be growing as an industry, but not to the degree that we could once those regs come through.
Did you mean 2023 for the next farm bill?
I believe, did I say 22?
You said 2013.
Oh, 2013. Yeah, well, that's definitely wrong. Yeah, 2013 has come and gone. My understanding is the farm bill is every 5 years, although we're talking about 2014 and 2018 farm bills for hemp, but the 2014 farm bill was delayed. It was supposed to be the 2013 farm bill, but Obama administration, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi, there was lots of delays in the execution of the 2013 farm bill that made it the 2014 farm bill. So then we had the 2018 farm bill. So I believe the next one will be in 23.
Okay.
But that's a bit beyond my scope, but I think that's right. And it will probably start, it's a huge bill. So those committee assignments will, and the committees, the relevant committees in the House and the Senate will begin that work in 22. And then the final bill will receive passage in 23, I believe.
Can you talk a little bit about your ideas when it comes to labeling in the CBD industry? Some of the things that I found interesting was not just the USDA organic, but also reporting the extraction technique, counterfeit protections, and even QR codes to third-party data from the test lab. Could you talk a little bit about some of those ideas?
So again, here's our whole flower product. This is our flagship product, our most popular product, and again, USDA organic seal down here. And like you said, the counterfeit protection, this hologram, this holographic seal here at the top. I believe we're the only CBD company that counterfeit protects our products with the hologram seal. A hologram seal is a good start, but not enough to protect against counterfeiting, because counterfeiters can counterfeit holograms too. So in addition to the hologram, there's a QR code here, and there's also a scratch off, like a basically a lottery ticket scratch off here that has a 4-digit pin below it. So when a consumer scans this QR code, it takes them to a page and asks them to enter the 4-digit pin under this scratch off tab. And by doing that, the consumer can verify that this is a unique product that hasn't been, where this pin and this QR code has not been used before. And if you try to scan the same barcode twice, it will alert you that it's not a verified product. So it's also tamper proof. So if you pull off this label, there's a honeycomb underneath it that shows that there's been a seal there that's not there now. Several different ways that this hologram seal is an effective deterrent against not just counterfeiting, but also this QR code links to our lab reports. So for people finding our products on a retail shelf, they're able to look at our lab reports and see our cannabinoid potency, our terpene profile, and also safety checks against residual solvents, heavy metals, pesticides, and biological contaminants like bacteria, mold, and fungus on the shelf before purchase, and also on our website before purchase. A lot of CBD companies do not offer the ability to look at lab reports before purchase, only after purchase, and that's a shady practice that we're working to educate consumers. Like, if you can't read a lab report before you purchase it, chances are you probably shouldn't purchase it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like kind of like a gotcha moment.
Like, yeah.
In terms of finding it on a retail shelf, where are your products available right now?
So the COVID lockdown really stunted our retail development. We were just getting started in the retail space, and COVID obviously shut down in-person everything in groceries and elsewhere. So we're based in Louisville. So regionally, independently owned natural food stores and food co-ops. Regionally, Chicago to Atlanta. We have a number of independently owned natural product retailers. Here locally in Louisville, it's Rainbow Blossom. But up and down the, say, I-65 corridor through Indiana into Chicago, down into Tennessee, to Georgia to Atlanta. Lots of these independent retailers, independent pharmacies carry our products. We're working on larger corporate retailing partners now, but there's still a challenge with CBD. CBD sales at the retail level took a real hit in 2020 during the pandemic, when people were looking to buy as much as they could online. Our online sales went through the roof during the pandemic, but retail took a real hit. So retailers are shy about onboarding new CBD products now, but we feel like with the conversations we've had with retailers and wellness buyers at major or mid-sized chains, because again, the major chains, the Krogers of the world, aren't coming in on anything CBD related, ingestible CBD related, until the FDA comes in. So we're dealing with corporations of a smaller size than the Krogers and Targets of the world. Those companies are interested in resetting their CBD shelves in the next quarter or two. And so it's about starting those conversations now with them, which is what we're doing.
You mentioned Chicago. Do you guys come up into Wisconsin at all?
In terms of retail, not yet, but I make a pilgrimage to Lambeau once a year. Very much looking forward to being, all up from Milwaukee to Sheboygan, all the way up to Green Bay.
Okay, very good. Well, let me know when you come through. I'm based in Madison.
Oh, great. Yeah. I think New Year, like there's a January 2nd game, I think, this next season. If it works out, I think that might be the thing.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. My brother lives in the area, and so I will be one exit away. So with a more pure product, is your product more expensive than some of your competitors?
We're price competitive with our competitors. We have a more pure product that our biomass, because it's flower only, is a lot more expensive and valuable than a whole plant biomass. And because we're certified organic, that adds another layer of cost onto our production. But we're cost competitive, dollar to milligram, as all the market leaders.
Do you do all of the what processes do you do in-house at Cornbread?
Well, we work with our manufacturer to produce, all of our products.
Okay.
So our product formulation takes place with our production partner, and then here we're receiving product and working with customers.
Is that like a contract manufacturing partner?
It's not exactly a contract manufacturing partner. We're custom formulating with a partner that's working with us exclusively. So it's not like an open season white label sort of situation.
Okay.
It's kind of a unique relationship that we're having with our manufacturer. So they're making our products exclusively for us.
Okay. Is there an issue with counterfeit labeling in CBD?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes. So we started in 2019 in April, our first product, before we got to organic. And by August of 2019, we got an email from a British man saying, "Is this your product?" Because someone had counterfeited our labels in the UK and was selling something that they were calling CBD capsules with our logo. That's how we got to the seal, because we were the victims of a counterfeit campaign, and within 6 months of being in business. And so if that happened to us that quickly, it's bound to be happening to everybody. But for some reason, we're the only company that's taking active steps to demonstrate to consumers that we're fighting counterfeiting.
Well, I mean, if it wasn't for that email, would you even know yet?
No.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
And he was buying it, if memory serves, for his son or his child. The contamination potential for a counterfeit CBD product is extraordinary, because anyone who's looking for a CBD product is looking for it for relief from something, and then you throw in a counterfeit product into someone looking for a solution. It's a real bad scenario potentially. So we felt compelled, because of our just looking out for our customers. Like, we can't be having counterfeit products floating around.
Well, and you talk about being an advocate politically. Do you do anything on the medical side? There's a lot of, there's a lack of information out there, the positive benefits that, there's a lack of research. Do you help push that forward in any way?
So we're still growing as a company. So our advocacy is where we can do it. As a former journalist, I maintain relationships with a number of lawmakers, and we're always sharing our thoughts from the industry to those lawmakers about how to move this industry forward. There's a lot that can be done. Like, once we've grown to the size that we need to grow to, we can do a lot more. And as we grow into a B Corp, we'll be more compelled to be more active corporate citizen in the space. Kentucky, you mentioned medical, is one of the 14 states without a medical marijuana program. So we're constantly advocating to lawmakers in Kentucky to make sure that we are not the very last state with a medical marijuana program. And that's where a lot of our advocacy work goes, is in state and also in DC. But Kentucky lags behind, even though we've got a robust hemp industry here in Kentucky, and we're able to make products that excel nationally from Kentucky with the legal confines that we have in the hemp program. It's a real shame that we're many steps behind the nation, other states, in terms of legalization of the full plant.
So these relationships that you had with lawmakers, do they like you more or less now that you're a small business owner and not a journalist?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Probably a little more, because they know they can talk to me without me turning right around and putting it on Twitter.
Very good.
But because we're now engaged as stakeholders, they have to treat us a little differently than before, when we were just asking questions for an editor. Now we're constituents, we're not reporters. So that changes the dynamic with legislators to a certain real degree.
After making the transition from journalist to hemp company co-founder, what was easier?
Well, there's nothing easy.
Yeah.
The the Cornbread Mafia book was supposed to be a 18-month to 2-year project. It took me 6 years. I lost my first contract. Amazon took over the publishing industry. Lots of things happened. I had to bootstrap myself into another book contract to get that published. That was tough. We started Cornbread Hemp with $100,000 in seed capital, virtually nothing in the grand scheme. And we've worked like dogs to create a superior product, and then to bring that product to market, and then to communicate to consumers why our product is superior, because it's flower only, full spectrum, certified organic. These things are difficult. And every plateau we get to on this climb on, up the mountain is a great feeling of success, but then we have another big hill to climb. So we're just back at it.
Any plans to write another book?
Way down the line.
Yeah. On what?
Well, I mean, growing this business will be a great book. The challenges that we have overcome and plan to overcome in order to create this brand, to create a reliable pipeline of cannabinoids from Kentucky to the rest of America is really challenging. And we've learned, my business partner is my first cousin, and we've learned an incredible amount in the 2 years that we've been in business. And we continue to, take on new skill sets and build new relationships in order to, creatively problem solve our way up the mountaintop. So up towards the mountaintop. So there's definitely a book in how we've created Cornbread Hemp and where this is taking us as a company and as a community. We've got farmers that are depending on us selling product to keep them farming. Like we have obligations and responsibilities to real people doing real work. And part of the difference between doing this and the journalism is the journalism, you write the story and you go to the next story. But now we've built relationships where people are depending on us. And that's really important.
Talking about people depending on you, some of the retailers depending on a product coming in. During COVID, did you consider going full in with an e-commerce only strategy?
Well, aside from keeping our existing retailers supplied, that's basically what we did.
Okay. Go ahead.
No. Just, and it was actually, because we were a small team, it's actually really beneficial. Mm-hmm. And it gave us the focus that we needed to grow the e-com side. If we had been trying to grow the e-com side while working on retail simultaneously, it was just too much for the team size that we had at the time. So focusing on e-com during the COVID lockdown, in retrospect, was really good for the company.
Any plans for a next promo video?
Oh yeah, that we got, we're gonna wait for this one to pop, and then we're not short on ideas.
Oh man, please keep the horse. I love the horse.
The horse. That horse's name is Supernova.
Really? It was just that one just really got me. Hi, horse.
We tried all day to get a horse in the shot.
Yeah.
And the horses were all pretty shy and would veer away from us. And so that was the first take of that shot, of that walking shot, and that was the closest the horses came to us. We still had to get a camera pan to get Supernova in the shot, but we got him in there.
And my video producer in particular, Alex, was very interested in who caught the flowers.
Oh, that's my business partner, Eric.
It was? Okay. Oh, he was like, man, that just seems like something a video guy would have to do. Well, very good. Was there anything else that we left out, or anything in particular that you want to make sure, our viewers and readers and listeners know about Cornbread Hemp?
Well, the important thing to know about Cornbread Hemp is that we're flower only, full spectrum, and USDA certified organic. And that's what makes us different. We're family owned and we're crowdfunded, so we're not a corporate brand. We're growing every day with customers across the country. We ship to 50 states and every U.S. territory. We ship to Guam and Puerto Rico on a regular basis. So we're a real nationwide brand, and educated CBD consumers who are looking for a better product than the one they have often come to us and are satisfied. So that means that we're doing something right here at Cornbread.
That's excellent, Jim. I hope for nothing but for success for you and your company.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. I really appreciate your time. I know that I took a lot of it. Before you leave, if you could please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot if you left a positive review on Apple Podcast or whatever platform you use. For Jim Higdon, I'm David Manti, and this has been the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.